I want to transition, obviously, deep into this conversation, just kind of flip it a little bit. And this involves two of John's favorite things, that being Andy Martino and WFAN. Now, Andy Martino went on WFAN with Salicata, Brandon Tierney.
They were on together?
Yeah, they were on together. Yeah. He went to promote his book, which was, I guess, called The Yankee Way, basically blowing smoke up of Hal Steinbrenner's ass, because that's basically what Andy Martino does. He also gave a little bit about the Mets situation, and they talked about Pete Alonso and his future with the team, obviously. More of like the thought process of David Stearns in terms of when Billy Epler was here. So I'm going to play that clip right here. So here it is.
When the hell do we get all the one-year deals? We know that Band-Aid, see what you got, move forward. To me, or really to you, do you think that Stearns, independent of Cohen, has his ultimate baseball answer on Alonso? Do you think he knows yet if he really wants him?
No, I think he's going to see how it plays out. But one little bit of insight we have there is I can tell you that when he was about to take over for that little window of time that Billy Epler was still there, it was like, hey, we should think about moving up. At least like talking to teams about Alonso this
From
winter.
Billy's perspective.
Yeah. Just because that's what most executives would explore.
Yep.
And Stearns shut that down. He's like, no, we're not trading him.
But he shut it. But he shut it down because he didn't want to be viewed as a bad guy. I think roll into town, get rid of the homegrown kid.
Well, Chaim Bloom did do that with Mookie Betts. Yeah.
Not because he thinks he needs to marry himself to Pete Alonso.
That is Andy Martino on WFAN with the two Caillou twins, and they were talking about.
I didn't hear
the bald community does not accept them. Okay, just so you know, the bald community does not accept either one.
Oh no, a lot of people don't like Caillou. There's a whole situation with Caillou. Like that kid's a dick. All right, okay, but. All I can say is that, yes, there has been the rumors about the Mets possibly exploring trade options with Pete Alonso last year, and then obviously this offseason. There were even some connections as to where Stearns, first thing he's got to do is address the trade market right now with Pete Alonso. If you look at it from Stearns' perspective, it's most likely, maybe he's not the bad guy. He doesn't want to upset these fans who, where Pete Alonso means a lot to them. I think that he understands personally, because I think he understands the statement that I've really made a lot, and that being that the Mets need Pete Alonso more than Pete Alonso needs the Mets. And I think that we really can establish that because, like we've already said, where's the power going to come from? Like, where is that power in the lineup going to come from? You hope Mark Vientos could give you that power. I'm not completely confident in that happening, because we still haven't seen consistency from him yet. Ryan Clifford has not even seen a pitch in the major leagues yet. Yes, there's guys in the minor leagues. There's guys who can provide that type of power, but I think that, he probably sees it as, I hope Pete Alonso has a great year. I hope that I could be in the position to pay him and keep him long term.
What it reminds me of is the way I look at a lot like the Brandon Nimmo situation, where, I didn't know if the Mets were going to be able to retain him, to be honest. I thought he might get overpaid somewhere. I thought, after having Conforto, Nimmo might be next. But Steve Cohen showed that, as him being a Mets fan as well, I think that's the other big part of this, is that, he knows what it looks like when you lose your leader, so to speak. And I just don't know. I don't really see Cohen signing off on it, honestly. It was based off the way he talks, the way he reacts. I feel like he kind of is of the same mindset of he sees the value of, here's a guy who's actually done as a Met, has been with this team, is really more of a vocal leader, at least after the game, than even Nimmo is or anyone like that. So I think he's someone that he would like to keep. And, despite the player, that's one thing on the field, but also there's that other guy off the field. And, what I wonder so much is that I was hoping, at least for the Mets' sake and Pete's sake, he would use this walk year as an opportunity to be like, oh, yeah, you don't want to pay me? Watch what I could do. The Aaron Judge type walk year.
Right.
That was the ideal scenario, but I'm looking at it on the flip side now, and I'm like, here's Pete Alonso, who's an emotional guy. I see him reaching all the time. He is reaching at the outside pitch constantly, not on balance, so many times. And then he goes to the dugout, he's frustrated, helmet off, mad. He's just not happy right now. And I feel like if this guy just had a contract in his hand that is signed, I wonder if we'd be seeing a different player. because I feel like at this point,
Yeah.
it could be getting to him. He could be stressed out, and he's like, they don't want me. This is my chance. I already turned down this reported contract that, maybe we'll get into, but he's in a situation where he's like, okay, well, if I don't get it done, now my value diminishes. And you know what? Some people use that as motivation, and some people it kind of hurts. And I think, if I'm looking at it, if I'm a homegrown guy, and this is my organization that I grew up with, I've been through so much with, and they don't prioritize me, they don't really care about me. Not everyone takes that the right way, and it can hinder your performance. Again, everyone.
I don't know about that. I don't really know about that because yes, okay, Pete Alonso is a huge impact hitter on this team, but there really was not any way as to where, okay, he's going into the ARB years. It wasn't going to happen. He wasn't going to get extended. We already knew that was going to happen, but I don't see it as like Stearns can come in here and say, okay, I'm going to lock down Pete Alonso. He kind of needs to bring him along with this evaluation year.
Well, I'll give you an example. I'll give you your buddy, Mr. Michael Conforto, who was offered $100 million, didn't perform, and never got that money again. You think Pete's afraid of that? Even though Pete's a much better player than Conforto, much better, but it can happen. You're one injury away. He's still diving. If I'm Pete Alonso and I'm in a country, why am I diving headfirst into first base? As a base runner, not as a first baseman. Like he's one little injury away.
I understand. Like in 2021 with the Michael Conforto and that, but now you're up to 2024. This team hasn't won anything, and you have to feel as to where I'm not committing to anyone right now. I have to see what I have. And Andrew's shaking his head. Like, it's just too late. It's too late in order to be like, before he goes to free agency, let's put a big contract extension in front of him. We're going to try and get this thing done. I feel like it was just too late. It was too late to even do that.
Okay, but here's my issue, is that why is it that every year we have a conversation with some kind of Met this is happening? Do the Braves ever have this problem other than Dansby Swanson?
They buy out their ARB years.
Oh, yeah, so that's what I'm saying, though. But the Mets could have avoided this situation.
They're in pre-ARB
a bunch of years ago by just extending Pete Alonso when they saw that this is a consistent production piece. And I've been saying the same thing with Francisco Alvarez. These are problems that could have been avoided, and you get the guys for less money than waiting it out to go to free agency, and then someone overpays.
The only way to fix that, though, is with a time machine, though. That's the thing. Well, that's the only way to fix that.
I think you're both kind of right, and I'm not just hedging here. Like I think that Carson, the timeline is true. The Mets missed their window, and I think a lot of it is because we had 11 GMs in 15 minutes, and it's hard to get anybody in there that can do the kind of work, Frank, that you're talking about now. And Carson, that you're talking about, that Stearns is trying to do in this evaluation mode. The thing that I think you really nailed, Frank, is that there's this perception in sports where you go to the walk year, you put on a show, you get paid. That ain't how everybody operates. Some people, I took Papelbon to task for saying that, Diaz was soft for crying and stuff like that on our show. People react differently. Some people say, you didn't pay me, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to light the world on fire. Some people are like, you didn't pay me, I sure would like to go out there and light the world on fire, but man, that's stressful. And it doesn't mean that they're a bad baseball player because they're not built that way. Some people cry, some people don't. Some people like getting punched in the face and then they go out there and they run through a wall. Some people, if you punch them in the face, they lay down. It is what it is. And I know those are crude analogies or whatever. They're just like they're not even a one for one, but that's what we're dealing with here. I think, Frank, that part of it is, maybe Alonso just wants to be here and wants to know he's going to be here. And it sucks that we're not in a position to do that for him because of everything that Carson said. But I think you might be onto something there. I really do.
Yeah, I have no indication that he wants to leave. You know what I mean? I just think, and I don't know. This is maybe just me. Like,
it's not going to be because of Alonso.
Like, just because we live here, we get to see it more. This guy does a lot of, charity work, and I love that he does, like, for the firefighters. He does a lot of events just in New York and things like that. Like, this is his home. It's his home away from home. Like, yes, he's a Gator boy, whatever, but he's really just kind of embraced himself in this community and just, again, made him the face. Other than, I still could kind of consider him the face of the Mets, honestly. I don't even consider him to be Francisco Lindor. That's my opinion. But I just think that, again, it's hard. And you saw the way Freddie Freeman reacted. That man does not want to be a Dodger. He does not. But they gave him the
Oh, poor Freddie Freeman.
I'm just saying
He
that,
gets to lose in the first round every
I'm-
year.
I'm
Oh
just saying
man.
that stuff like that can happen though, where a guy can leave even though he doesn't want to. Like stuff like that. That's just the business part of it.
Again, but you have to think about the business side of baseball things. Like, the Mets haven't won anything. They're in this position where Pete Alonso's up for a contract.
And the Braves were just coming
it's
off
like-
a World Series win. So they were
It's basically just like we've said, cleaning up the mess that was left before Stearns that he has no control over. And when he does look at this team as compared to like a team in Milwaukee that he did run, they were not playoff contenders that much. Like, it just 2022 they were one and done. I mean, we're nowhere near what they were doing in 2022. Different story there, but it's like the Mets haven't had that sustainable winner with anybody here. I think that Stearns is kind of looking at it with things that he can control.
There is one thing that I think is really important here. Stearns grew up a Mets fan. Cohen is a Mets fan. And what do we lack? We are the team that is known for one reason or another, not keeping the best guys. I alluded to it before. We traded Tom Seaver, Doc Gooden, off the field issues, Matt Harvey, injury. All those guys are gone. Darryl Strawberry, off the field issues. David Wright, injury. He's gone. You know, we traded Nolan Ryan. We let
Wheeler.
Justin Turner walk. We let Zach Wheeler walk. We let all these guys go. And people say to me all the time, John, do you want to win or do you want to keep the homegrown guys? I'd like a little bit of both, if I'm being honest. I would like for a Met to have 500 home runs as a Met. I would like for a Met to be here for the entirety of his career and be an all-time great player. Because when you think of all the great players in Mets history, they were not Doc Gooden was great. He still had that perfect game in that World Series with the Yankees, didn't he? Tom Seaver won his 300th game as a Chicago White Sox, didn't he? Jacob deGrom is going to finish his career as a Texas Ranger, right? All these guys.
It
Nolan
never
Ryan
ends the way you want it.
Nolan
It never
Ryan
ends the
more
way you want it.
no-hitters than anybody ever, while the Mets franchise didn't have a no-hitter. I mean, sometimes the story matters too. Sometimes
Yeah, of
for
course.
vibes, you got to bring a guy back. And I think Alonso starts to fit that mold. I think he does help the team win, but I'd be lying if I told you that that's not a part of it for me too.
All right, I'm going to play John's Twitter comment section real quick. I'm going to role play here. If we're going to keep guys for just vibes, then why is JD Davis not still here?
Dom Smith?
Dom Smith's still here.
Dom Smith stand squad. Jesus.
Yeah,
Christ.
none of those guys are
I
good.
think
That's
that you have
the
to
there's
look
one
at it
thing-
from both sides.
If
Obviously,
there's one thing, if there's one thing I wanted
mean,
to
he's
say real
just he's
quick-
just put in a tough position right now
Yeah.
where they lost their deadline to extend him. They lost it. They're not in it. They're 4 years away from it. It should have happened after he won Rookie of the Year in 2019.
The interesting thing
But-
to me from the business
Yeah.
standpoint is if supposedly, again, it's reported, we don't know if it's fact, turning down 7 years, 158. If that's the case, and then he turns that down, then opts to drop his agent and then moves over to Boris. The interesting thing is, and I've been saying, I think if Pete goes to free agency, he's going to get humbled because, to your point, Carson, the Mets need him more. But if the Mets were to bow out, that screws Pete because he doesn't have the money that the Mets would drive up for him. And I don't think others would give him that cash. Now, when you're a Boris client, I'm very curious if he would have the balls to go back on it and potentially even settle for less back to New York. Like if he's offered 158 prior to Boris and he
Did
says
Nimmo do
no,
that?
goes
Nimmo
to
did
Boris.
that.
Well, look on this offseason.
Yeah,
Every
I'm
Boris
curious on
client
that.
basically did that. I mean, look at Bellinger. Bellinger's a perfect example.
But it's like I'm very curious. Mainly because like I think Boris wants to wipe off this past off season as if it wasn't a failure for him. He'll pat his back. He'll pat himself on the back for as much as he can for it. But it's still not what he thought it would be. So yeah, little things like that I'm curious about, and I still call me a conspiracy theorist all you want, but I'm still also of the mindset that it wouldn't shock me if Boris wanted Pete to sign for big money elsewhere to then drive the Mets to drive the Soto price even higher to allow that to give him what he wants, which is the more money in terms of modern money for the the today value to be higher than what Ohtani got because Boris wants to be the agent for the guy who has the most money. That's me conspiracy here, but just again, putting it all out there from the business standpoint, I'm very curious how Pete goes about handling it.
It'll be interesting because
be
I think again, like I've said, the Mets, like in the current state that they're in, they need Alonso a lot more than Alonso needs them. So we'll see what happens, but I'm confident that it will get done. I'm confident that, you know, he will be here long term if all breaks the right way. Of course, we still just don't really know what the future is. I mean, as right now in the present, he's not really playing up to getting that contract extension as of right now.
Right.
But I think that at one point, you know, he's gonna eventually break out of it because I don't think that, you know, he's just completely washed and he's just a complete declining player who everyone says he's going into his 30s. He's 29 right now, okay? He's not
ancient.
35. He's
old.
not Christian Walker, who's 33 and a half, like John said. Like,
he played, and you could use this as a negative,
Yeah.
I'm sure. But people who say he's a declining player and he's a bad first baseman. Now, I don't think he's a Gold Glove first baseman like the jersey hanging up behind me, right? But no one is. Like, nobody's Keith, okay? Let's just be honest there. But Alonso does not hurt you defensively at first base. He is not a liability at first base. He never has been. And if anything, I would argue over the course of his career, he's gotten better at first base.
First base is supposed to be one of the worst defenders on the team.
Right.
I mean, that's usually first base and left field are usually typically in a vacuum. Those are the worst defenders on the field.
Correct. And he doesn't hurt you there, which means, okay, you could use that for whatever it means, right? That's also why first basemen don't get paid like shortstops. Everybody knows that's part of the reason why.
Overall player value, positional value. That's just how that works. You know?
And the other thing is he plays every day. So this thing of like his body's not going to hold up. He's not going to hold up. How you don't?
He hasn't shown us any sign that that's going to happen.
No,
I mean,
the only reason why he missed games last year is because he got hit on the hand, and he was probably shitty because he came back too fast because the team needed him to come back because they have no power without him.